75 years ago, as you mentioned, Britain and its allies accepted the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany, and that 75th anniversary this year was meant to be a very big occasion here in Europe. But of course, because of coronavirus lockdowns, much of the public fanfare that was expected unfortunately couldn't go ahead, but it didn't stop the commemorations entirely. The day started with Winston Churchill's speech being broadcast across a number of radio stations, the one that he gave back on that day in 1945. Prince Charles and Camilla as well led the nation in 2-minute silence. And then the Queen tonight, as you mentioned, addressed the UK and the Commonwealth. And she did draw parallels in her speech. She said it was important to keep the faith, never give up, and to never despair, echoing the words of her father, who also said that during his speech. And she said that whilst we can't celebrate in the way we would have liked to, we can remember from our homes and our doorsteps. So we are seeing that tonight across much of the UK as they do come together to pay tribute to those that were lost in the war, that golden generation, Kim.
It's quite extraordinary, isn't it, the Queen? We've seen more of her speaking in the past few months than we have in years.
Yeah, that's right. I think the Queen is really being rolled out in some ways to try and rally Britain through this. Of course, it's been a very tough couple of months for the UK, more so than other countries in some ways. Its death toll is now the second highest in the world. It's certainly the highest in Europe, and there's been real pressure here on the health system to try and stem that death toll. We are hearing more reports that it is the nation's elderly that are really bearing the brunt of it. A number of questions are still being asked about whether enough is being done in the country's nursing homes to support those elderly people. Just to show you how desperate the situation has become, Tim, the UK government a few weeks ago was running very low on PPE, in particular surgical gowns. It couldn't get any out of China, and so it actually took up an offer from a T-shirt manufacturer in Turkey. Some 400,000 surgical gowns were flown over by the Royal Air Force. Well, they didn't pass safety tests now, and those 400,000 gowns are essentially locked up in a warehouse at Heathrow Airport, and it's contributing still to a major shortage of PPE equipment. So certainly the death toll is coming down, but we are not out of the woods yet. We expect to hear more from the government this weekend about what will happen with lockdown measures.
We're rolling out some vision from 75 years ago when the war in Europe ended. Quite in contrast now. We're quite away from any dancing in the streets at this point.
Yeah, that's right. The police actually, though, today have spoken to some media saying they're a little bit upset about the mixed messaging from the government when it comes to those sorts of parties. Of course, VE Day over here, I should say, is a real public occasion. The weather is getting warmer. It's 23 degrees now. I mean, I myself am quite warm. And people like to have street parties or go for picnics. And we're seeing that actually tonight. I mean, here on social media, street party is a trending topic because there are crowds gathering in certain streets and public places wanting to kind of celebrate with their neighbours. But of course, in this age of social distancing, that doesn't really go together too well. So there are concerns that perhaps the public are becoming a little bit lax when it comes to government warnings. Boris Johnson is going to address this issue on Sunday night with his announcement about what will happen with the next stage of lockdown. But earlier in the week, the papers were prefacing that speech by saying he may be letting people out for longer to do things like picnics, etc. Well, it seems that may have now caused a bit of a headache for the government because people may have jumped the gun and started to leave their homes a bit early.
Trent, there's almost a movie in Boris Johnson and his time over the past few months. Let's start with Brexit and then look at COVID-19. He almost died from the illness. He was talking about herd mentality, and here he is back. He's back in Parliament, and he's being slammed by many people by trying to be too bullish with the return to normality.
That's right. Well, he's got a lot of people in his ear, Tim, particularly from his own party, really biting at the bit to try and reopen the economy. The Bank of England this week warned that the UK could be on the brink of a recession, the last of which was seen 300 years ago. I had to look it up. I hadn't even really heard of it. It's the 1709 Great Frost Depression, they call it. I mean, that's how far you have to go back before you can see an economic situation as bad as this. For that reason, Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party really do want to try and fire up the UK economy again, because the outlook right now is not good. They say that the economic output is down 30% for the first half of the year, and over 50% of the working public now in the UK are on some form of government welfare. So that is really the difficulty for Boris Johnson. How do you balance trying to reopen your economy and try to mitigate some of that damage with the fact that your country is got the second highest death toll in the world? It's a difficult predicament for him and all of those in government when it comes to making these decisions.
Absolutely, Trent. Thanks as always. We look forward to having a chat next weekend.